Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Memory Card: The History of Video Games Podcast Edition. So today we're going to catch up on my backlog of episodes that I needed to do. So today we're going to do episode 7, Computer Space. That one has been up on YouTube for quite a while, but I have not done the podcast version, so that's what we're going to do today. So, starting out, Computer Space is the first arcade game and first commercial video game in history. It was showcased on October 15th, 1971, at the Music Operators of America trade show in Chicago. It was made by Nutting Associates and developed by Nolan Bushnell. In this podcast, I almost said video because the video script and the podcast script are pretty much the same. So I almost said video. But in this podcast, we won't just talk about computer space and its development history, but we will also look into Nolan Bushnell's history, which we will continue when we begin talking about Atari and not the next episode, but the episode after. So, Computer Space did not receive commercial success, despite being the first. It took inspiration from Space War, which we did cover in the first episode of Memory Card. However, it began a huge impact not only for the future of gaming, but also for Nolan Bushnell, who would go on to create Pong, Atari, and actually Chuck E. Cheese. He created Chuck E. Cheese. So, anyway, we will talk about Pong and Atari in future episodes, but obviously, we're not going to talk about Chuck E. Cheese. Maybe I'll do it in like a bonus episode for the Patreon that I'm still kind of trying to wrap what that would look like, because there's a lot of arcade stuff in Chuck E. Cheese. So I think it'd be kind of interesting to talk about Chuck E. Cheese from like a gaming perspective, like what it kind of did for like the arcade stuff and like Chuck E. Cheese video games. I think that'd be kind of a fun bonus episode that's not really like attached to memory card, but kind of just like it's a different thing. So let me know if you'd be interested in that. However, today we look at Nolan Bushnell's personal history leading up to computer space and the development of computer space. So, welcome to Memory Card: The History of Video Games, where we take a deep dive into the world of video game history. This journey is through a chronological lens, and today we take a look at the first arcade video game, Computer Space. Nolan Bushnell was born in Clearfield, Utah in 1943. Bushnell enrolled at Utah State University in 1961 and studied engineering and business. He then transferred to University of Utah's College of Engineering in 1964. He graduated with a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. So during his time in college, he played Space War, which would go on to later inspire him to create Computer Space. So Bushnell first worked at Lagoon Amusement Park in Farmington, Utah, during his college years. When he was made manager of the games department there, he grew accustomed to electromechanical games, which we've kind of touched on through several of the episodes lately, because that was kind of the first video games. Was they were kind of like electromechanical rather than kind of like this digital thing that we have now. So after college, Bushnell moved to California with the dream of working for Disney. However, Bushnell worked for Ampex, I think that's how you pronounce it, as an electrical engineer, and there he met Ted Dabney. I think that's how you pronounce that. So Bushnell told Dabney of his ideas to create pizza parlors with arcade games and showed Space War to Dabney at the Stanford Artificial Intelligence Laboratory. The two then formed the company Syzygy. I don't know really how to pronounce that. There's a lot of words I don't know how to pronounce today. And began working on a clone of Space War called Computer Space. Dabney constructed the prototype while Bushnell searched for a manufacturer, which ended up being Nutting Associates, which had also created Computer Quiz, which I think, touched on in a previous episode. I don't know if I'm misremembering that, but I think we did. Oh yeah, I just read it down the script. We did. This is a very professional setup, if you can't tell. So it was around this time that the Data General Nova mini computer was introduced for a small amount of $4,000 in 1970s cost. That made it a possibility to create such a game. However, this new computer proved challenging, and ultimately they decided to create custom hardware that could run a simple single player version of the game, according to Strong National Museum of Play. When Computer Space launched, it was met with an initial hype, but some found the game's controls too complex to enjoy. Plus, the game had to combat a competitor at the same time, Galaxy Game, which we will touch on in the next episode. According to the Strong National Museum of Play, Nutting sold 1,500 units of the game, making it a commercial failure compared to Computer Quiz. Although Computer Space was similar to that of Galaxy Game and Space Wars, uh, the latter games had success. Noah Wardrip Fruin, author of How Pac-Man Eats, aimed to find out why, and the answer was simply a lack of gravity. So, as we talked about in a previous episode, Space War had a star that produced gravity that would pull the ships in the game, in which required players to use strategy to win. It created a known variable where they had to figure out how to maneuver around this thing. Computer Space lacked this component, and Wardrip Fruin believes this is why it ultimately failed. Both Galaxy Game and Space War had this gravity component. He goes on to say in his article with The Reader, an MIT newspaper, Computer Space was created using television technology while Galaxy Game used a general purpose computer. That television technology prevented Computer Space from having that gravity mechanic. Space Wars added a computer processor to its cabinets to defeat this issue. So obviously, Bushnell would go on to have commercial success with Pong and Atari. I mean, that's self-explanatory, which heavily influenced the video game industry. But he had his first blunder with Computer Space. So with the history out of the way, how does the game play? So, firstly, it is important to look at the arcade machine that housed the game. It looks like something straight out of Star Trek and science fiction. I would honestly love to have a replica of the arcade cabinet in my man cave. I think it just looks so science fiction. I would look it up because I can't show it to you on a podcast. But I would look it up or watch my video. I think I put it on there on the video version. But I would just Google and see what it looks like. It's really cool actually. It's a really cool machine. So anyway, the game was played on a 15-inch black and white television monitor. The game differed with Space War in that it pits the player against two enemy flying saucers. Players would score a point for every hit. If the player had a higher score than the enemy after 99 seconds, the player would earn a free game. So I guess the kind of mentality with this is that you have a time limit, and if you could beat the enemy, you wouldn't have to insert another quarter to keep playing, or quarter whatever they would charge. And that's an interesting mechanic. I don't know if any other arcade games really had that mechanic. I know like lives became a thing, which kind of was that because like in this time frame it was like one life and that's it. But you know, like with Galaga, you had 3 lives. You know, if you died, and then you could keep earning lives, which could extend how long you're playing. Um, so yeah, that was kind of a version of this, I guess. Is you would earn a life basically, so you could keep going. Beyond that, there really is not too much to the gameplay. It was simple, although apparently the controls were complicated according to early game tests at the Dutch Goose Bar near Stanford University. I wonder if that bar is still around. I kind of want to do another live Google search to see if that bar still exists or not. Is this it? This might be it, actually. It looks like it's still around. Yeah. Holy crap. It's still here. Wow. I gotta almost go visit that bar just for the historical purposes of like gaming stuff. Like, oh, why'd you choose us? And it's like, well, did you know Computer Space was play tested at your bar? I don't feel like they look at me like a crazy person. Anyway, so while Computer Space may have been a failure, it was an important stepping stone for the rest of video game history. The Strong National Museum of Play points out that Jerry Lawson, who was inspired by Computer Space to make Demolition Derby, Ed Logg, who created Asteroids, also got inspiration from the game, which both of those games, especially Asteroids, just huge phenomenons during their time. And I still play Asteroids. I love Asteroids. So Bushnell would also use the game design from Computer Space and Pong to adopt his own game design philosophy, which would be called Bushnell's Law, which is essentially make games that were easy to learn but difficult to master. I think I'm safe to say that most arcade games follow this basic principle. Um, like again, take Galaga, right? Know, you step in, you know how to play it. You just shoot, but there's an actual strategy to it that you have to that takes a little bit of skill to master to be able to get to those later levels because it's almost impossible to do that with just one ship. Um, and I wouldn't say impossible, but it makes it so much easier if you know the like if you go look at like a speed run in Galaga on YouTube to get two ships and stuff like that. So long story short, basically I think a lot of arcade machines follow this basic principle, and I think video games in general nowadays still kind of follow that basic principle that it's the controls should be easy, but to get really good should be difficult. Um, so I think that's a basic principle that's still followed. And so that kind of actually wraps up Computer Space. This is a very short episode than most. Um, there's just not much to it beyond kind of the introduction of Nolan Bushnell, who is going to continue to be a player in a few episodes now, especially when we get to Atari and Pong, which Atari is only a couple episodes away. I don't really know when I'm going to get to Pong, but I will eventually, and we all know what happened with that, especially with the home video game console market. Um, so there's just quite a lot, and it's kind of interesting because he also kind of helped form Chuck E. Cheese, which because that was his idea was a pizza parlor with arcade machines. Um, and I mean that clearly became a commercial success. So yeah, I mean if anything, this is a good story about how your first failure doesn't determine the rest of your life's success. Because this guy clearly is a huge historical figure in early video game history, and the butterfly effect of his influence on the video game industry. I'm gonna list off my sources real quick. So obviously the Strong Museum of Play was used. The Reader, which is with MIT. Um, the Arcade Museum, and Wikipedia, of course. Always got to include Wikipedia, but what are you going to do? So, yeah, I would check out Computer Space, go watch some gameplay. You'll kind of see what I mean, that there's just not much to it. Um, and also, if you're interested, watch the video version. The video version is always going to be much more of a documentary style, while this is more of a casual conversation. So if documentaries are more your style, I'll go check out the video version on my channel, Gamma Galaxian. Um, and so in terms of the future stuff, next weekend I will be again working on the Galaxy game episode, the video version. So I don't think there will be an episode of the podcast or video version of Memory Card next weekend. Because I'm going to start working on that. So what I'm going to shoot for is August 31st for both of those to come out. Um, And yeah, so you can check me out on my YouTube. I have a Threads account, I have a Blue Sky account, Instagram, of course, but all Gamma Galaxian, all across the board. Um, I do streams on the weekends. So Friday is Retro Fridays where I play a retro game. Right now, I am playing Spider Man for the PS1, which was my favorite game in my childhood. Although the first stream for that did not go well, it was kind of a disaster, but that's fine. And right now I'm playing Starfield on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Yeah, feel free to check me out on my live streams, and especially if you're into retro stuff, because I play that every Friday. So that'll do it for this episode of Memory Card. It is a shorter episode, but we're going to get to some good things later on. So have a good one.